All right, David, thank you. Well, if more snow or ice does come our way, some environmental advocates are asking you to use a little less salt than normal. Jamal James highlighting Winter Salt Week in Wisconsin.
One way to protect yourself from slipping on ice during the winter season is by throwing down some salt. But according to a coalition of organizations from across the state, using too much can be bad for the environment.
This is really connected to our storm drains and how our storm drains work. Anything that's going to get into that storm drain goes right into our waterways, and that's why it's a pollutant.
Alyssa Ranke with Fox Wolf Watershed Alliance tells me that impacts things like creatures living in the ecosystem. Something that Allison Madison with Wisconsin Salt Wise says is important since she loves seeing them when she's enjoying the outdoors.
As the salt levels go up, and maybe they're also dealing with other toxins, other pollutants. Warmer water is a stress on a lot of aquatic organisms, so salt becomes kind of like the nail in the coffin.
It also impacts infrastructure from a wide variety of things like roads, vehicles, and even bridges, because it speeds up the corrosion process and rust metal.
So the impacts on our infrastructure are huge, but taxpayers pay for that down the road, right? When we're like, oh, we need to redo, this interstate or this bridge, and we're talking about millions of, across the country, billions of dollars of damage.
The next time that you plan on putting out some salt, one thing to remember is all you need is 12 ounces or roughly the size of a coffee mug to cover 10 sidewalk spaces or your driveway. And it can save you money in the long run. You use less salt, don't need to worry about rust, and local buildings and bridges aren't degrading as fast. That's why it helps to shovel snow early and often. In Grand Chute, Jamal James, Action 2 News.